Sit with Lexi B.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good, Constance. I'm so excited to talk to you today. You have no idea. I just want to call out, I don't know if you know this, you probably do. I tell you a lot of things. You were my first black manager. And even though you were a manager for a good 2.5 days.
Months.
Was it months?
It was half a year, but we'll do 2.5 days.
It wasn't half a year?
That's just how great I was. It just felt like it was too short.
No, because you joined the company in November, December?
November.
Girl, I left in January.
Well, damn, it was a long two. Woo, you were so much trouble. I couldn't wait to get you off.
And I think when you joined, I was like, welcome, I'm leaving.
You were. I wouldn't be shocked if you said it in my interview.
No, because I remember you interviewed in the summer, right? I didn't know then. And when I interviewed you in my spirit, I was like, I have to get out. Because I remember you being like, tell me about the team. And I was like, do I have to? Do I?
You were very honest in a very Lexi way. Like, you made such an impact. I had a whole conversation with my mother about you. I said, yeah, there's going to be this girl who I would manage. She ain't staying, but she's super cool.
Like, it's clear we ain't doing this. We ain't doing this. But speaking of Mama Constance, where are your people from?
Cotton Plant, Arkansas.
Wait, for real?
Mm-hmm.
That's the city name?
Yes, Cotton Plant.
I don't know how I feel about that.
They don't grow cotton anymore. It's turned to marijuana.
Blessings? Question mark. Okay. Cotton plant. But I think where my hesitation is, I'm assuming how we got the name, and that makes me sad.
Totally. And if, the more I think about my family, actually, my uncle, my grandparents, they picked cotton. Like, I have an uncle who didn't make it because he got ran over by a tractor when they were picking cotton. Certain Caucasian folks thought it would be funny to chase them. So, it was a real thing. That's how he grew up. And getting to the big city was going to Memphis.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I also think that a lot of people assume that this type of history is hundreds of years back. And I'm always the one like, no, girl, it was like yesterday. I would argue it's today. And so we speaking the history out loud, I think, is very important.
100%. Like 1940, I think, is my uncle. 1943, 45 is when my uncle was born.
See? It's crazy. It's crazy. So I want to talk to you about starting over, because you have done this many times and have done it successfully. I think a lot of people are very scared of starting over. This idea that you grew something, and whether or not you like it, you got to start from the ground up. So I want to ask you, when was the first time that you had to start over, whether it's personally, professionally, whether it's on the playground or in college? When did you were like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna be okay?
You know what? I would probably say 11 years old. If I really think about it, I think of starting over very broadly, and it looks different depending on where you are in your life. But I would say 11 years old, and that was more of a reinventing myself, but learning how to move in different spaces. And I guess I'll say a little bit more of that. I was a gymnast growing up, which before all the black girl magic and gymnastics, there were not a lot of us.
Look, shout out to Dominique Dawes.
100%. That was my idol. That was my idol. But there wasn't like today.
I messaged her and told her that she's fabulous, and she responded and said thanks. So in my opinion, Dominique and I are friends. But yes.
But she's that cool. And she's just a pioneer, right? Being in a white sport that took up all of my time from the time I was 2 almost. I was there 4 to 5 hours a day by the time I was in elementary, 5 hours on the weekends. Just very engrossed in a white culture, I would say. Still living in my neighborhood, but when you're somewhere that often,
that becomes your home.
That's your home.
Your home, yeah.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school hit, and the schools in my neighborhood weren't great, so my mom sent us, it was a minority to majority program. Bus the black kids to the white neighborhood across town to go to school. What was crazy was that's when I realized my life is really different than the black folks I was on the bus with. And I had no idea, even though culturally we're in the same neighborhood, same socioeconomic status, all these things, but I was in this sport and my mom's a flight attendant, so I had traveled a lot of places.
You got good benefits.
Did good benefits, first class for free.
Yes.
Hence my bouginess.
Y'all, her son fences. Enough said. But yeah, I see where it stems from. Okay, Mama Constance. Yes.
But I had to learn how to exist in two worlds. And as an 11-year-old, I was confused. I remember trying to have a birthday party with my gymnastics friends and my school friends. Yeah. That was the worst party in my life. I don't think I've really had a birthday party since.
It's stressful, girl, when you got to bring them together.
Right. It was, it's segregation, right? And that was probably, when you're elementary and you kind of go to neighborhood schools, whatever. But when you go to a school that intentionally is bringing one race to the other race, plus you've kind of worked in a world where you've coexisted, and then all of a sudden you're around people who haven't had to coexist, and actually it's not even safe to coexist anymore. The white folks don't want to talk to you, and the black people kind of call you white until they get to know you and they're like, oh no, she's cool. But I come in like doing gymnastics, they're like, who does that? You went to Korea? Who does that? You went skiing? Like, who are you?
Right. I was called Oreo.
Yep.
Yeah. Because my house was in a white neighborhood. My parents' homes were in a black neighborhood. I went to an all-white school. So I tell folks, like, Monday at 8 a.m. to, like, Friday at 3:30. It was one part of me. And then the weekend was another part. And the way you described it, I've never thought of it that way, but like what you just said, I think illuminates and illustrates what I was going through at 11. And that's a lot for a kid when you think about it.
It's a lot.
It's a ton.
It's a lot. But that was the first time, and at that time, obviously, I didn't have any professional capital. Maybe I'll argue that I did, and I'll get there shortly. But that was the beginning of hard situations quite young, and hard situations that would prepare you professionally. I'm not talking about, like, I don't know, sitting on a corner shooting dice and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, like, how in the hell do I stay authentic? What is my authenticity? Because people who look like me are challenging it, and the other people don't want to talk to me. And it was just, in that setting, it was just I had to decide who I was going to be and how I was going to survive. And quite frankly, growing up, no matter what race you were, you picked white or black. I chose black. What that meant, though, was I chose black because I was black. I am black. But what that meant was, for a long time, I didn't have any white friends really until law school. Because I never really figured that out again. And quite frankly, the older I got in these spaces that were in Georgia where I was at, I don't think I realized till college that people thought I lived in this segregated way. And it was, it was just little stuff. Like, you get to college and there's something in the paper about some high school in Georgia, right outside Atlanta, that didn't let black people into the prom, or they had a separate prom. And I remember my college friends, black people, were like, what kind of crap is that? And I was like, that doesn't happen where you're at.
And they're like, no, it doesn't actually. No, no. Mm.
But all that is to say, like, without knowing it, I really started to, one, understand how to start over, and then also a little bit understanding my brand. I wouldn't have called it brand at that time. If you asked me, I would just say, I did my work because someone told me I was supposed to. I was personable because I was born that way, and my mom taught me to be respectful.
Right.
What that entitled me to or allowed me to do, or like, teachers loved me. I could disappear from a school and go back to my kindergarten teacher, and she would write a recommendation for me in high school. I mean, it was, and I still really probably to not recently, closer in the last maybe 10 years, understood a skill set that I was building. Like, my professional capital obviously has changed from being a diligent, engaged student, regardless of what was going on in my life. And that's whether it's personal life, whether like, because I was out at the club all the time or whatever, people can still respect you and you can be you. And that somehow has carried through my life, is this balance of, I show up a certain way, I'm going to get my shit done, I'm going to excel at it. And it builds all this respect that honestly I didn't respect the respect that I was building. Because you're still learning that.
Right.
What's happening. And it's people point it out to you and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool.
So I guess to extend that, in order to build that professional capital, though, I think what you said is poignant, is you have to know who you are. And as we talk, I don't really think I knew who I was from a, like, if you take a person and make them 1,000 puzzle pieces, I knew and respected a lot of my puzzle pieces, but it wasn't until probably my mid-20s where I kind of put the glue in the puzzle piece and said, okay, this is who I am. Because growing up similar to you, I had to compartmentalize a lot. So it was when I went to college was the first time where I was like, wait a minute. So study Lexi, which is like where the white kids are, now coexists with homegirl Lexi, which is where the black kids are, because in college we all live together and study together. And that was a lot for me to navigate socially. And many times I did not navigate it well, and sometimes I did, and I learned a lot. My question for you is, when did you start kind of fitting that glue and solidifying all of these layers of identity for yourself?
I probably did it in a more constructive way late college, early law school.
Mine was 100% not constructive, by the way. We'll talk about that more off camera, but I recommend a better way for everyone. But go ahead.
I'd say constructive and more intentional. Definitely when I got to law school, I made a lot of intentional choices. I intentionally was going to be friends with white people. I was intentionally going to try new things. I was intentionally going to sit in spaces that were uncomfortable. I was going to engage with everyone, regardless how that may feel uncomfortable.
But that's the purpose of law school, right? Like, if we're going to be here for 3 years, right?
Some would argue that's the purpose of college, right? You went to Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Right? I went to University of Pennsylvania. I was in classes with like Ivanka Trump. I'm not saying we would have been friends, but I'm saying I was in classes with people of that amount of wealth, status, connections. I did not utilize any of those connections. I didn't even understand why I would.
Until you went to college. Okay, until you went to
law school.
I
went to law school. And I intentionally felt like by that time I figured, you know what, college, I learned how to be a lot of different things. Like, I think similar to what you said, I lived in a black dorm my freshman year. So you're seeing all types of black folks. Like, not just black, African American, Caribbean, and folks who are proud of their heritage, right?
Oh, yeah.
You ask me where I'm from, I'm like, I'm playing Arkansas. Someone else is like, but where? I'm like, Arkansas?
Why was that Stanford too? I felt like at Stanford, I'm like, I was a minority within a minority because most of the Black community at Stanford were immigrants. They were of the diaspora. They were, from the Caribbean. They were from Europe and then of the diaspora. And then the ones who were born in America, the likelihood of them being first generation of the diaspora, I can probably count on two hands the number of Black American kids whose ancestry is the enslavement of Black bodies in the United States when I went to Stanford. But yeah, look, Black immigrants, they are proud, and I love it for them.
100%, and I didn't understand it. I will say the negative part that I came out of that situation understand. I was like, nobody really wants to be African American. Nobody.
Nobody. You're right. I was like, this is a very interesting experience. Yes.
It was crazy. But all of that I was learning while trying to also keep up with school and all that. I had this, I thought she was going to be my white friend, right? We were in summer. I was in like a remedial pre-college summer program, whatever. And we were cool. The minute school started, we got on campus, that girl walked right past me. And I was like, oh, okay, we're back to this.
Wow.
And so I really hung on to African, like my best friends from college, African Americans, single household. I think I had one that was in a married, and general socioeconomic status. That was my cruise. Not that I didn't engage with other folks, but that was where I felt most comfortable. I didn't understand somebody saying, oh, you like that Southern trap music, you live in the hood. And I'm just like, I would call my mom. I'm like, do you live in the hood?
Confirm.
I didn't get it. But that was also me. That led me, 4 years of that and getting to the point by my senior year where I was like doing a research project with a professor, kind of coming into my own. I've always liked research. I was always timid to do this stuff because I felt like everybody was a genius. They took like Calculus 8 in high school, and I'm like, that's nice. But that helped make me be very intentional for law school. So that's kind of where it came from, like not using the gifts I was provided or the access that I had and not understanding that I should. And so that was the beginning of that journey. Strangely enough, this is another way of your professional capital in learning who you are. And you know me, Lexi, I don't know any other way to be but kind of authentic. Every time I have interviewed with someone and I go to work for them later, they're like, well, I knew in the interview, what you see is what you get with you. And I like that. I think I'm able, I don't even know if I can code switch anymore. My code switching is maybe not cursing as much at this point. I don't even know. Like, I am very much like, what you see is what you get. This is how we're going to operate. And I was like that in high school. I was like that in law school. I would go to a mixer. I had my hen and Coke. Someone pulled me to the side. This is a mixture for law firms. Hen and Coke.
And you had Hennessy and Coke?
Yes.
Don't tell me you brought a red cup, too, because I'd be like, girl.
I didn't bring my own cup to the bar.
Girl.
But honestly, if I was getting that opportunity. But that was me. I liked hen and Coke. I liked 𝐿BE&x. That's what I drank. So a career advisor pulled me aside. I was like, sweetie, you have to drink wine. But it was just learning. But with that being said, I think there's something like people feel comfortable, plus you happen to be smart or diligent. Even if my grades weren't the best, I showed up, I was very consistent. I did inadvertently build relationships, and I didn't realize, I didn't realize the importance of that. I just, to some extent, naturally did that. Some of it because I didn't know what was happening in class, and I had to go talk to them, and I'm very like, all right, I need to pass. How do I do this? But when you're working closely with professors in that way, even if they're helping you learn, you do build those relationships. And what someone wants when you look at careers and starting over is perseverance. They want you to be resilient. They want you to try. They want you to care. They want you to be engaged. Those things I've learned, to at least in my life, have been so much important than like sometimes the output. I may still get that C. But they'll vouch for me to do pretty much anything that I want to do.
Well, I can be the first person to say, you know, for folks listening, when I left the company that Constance and I met at, I went to her old company and I called you and was like, who should I meet? You gave me a email of 46 people, I counted.
Was it?
It was insane.
I went through everybody.
I went through all of them. And I had a copy paste message on chat. Like, hi, my name is Lexi. Constance gave me your name. I worked with her at Twitter. Would love to find time. Every single one of them were like, oh, you know Constance? Okay, bet, on it. And I was like, oh, damn. I'm going to have to wear like a real shirt at this meeting. And it was just, I don't know if I told you that, but it was astonishing how these people could literally say, I met Constance doing this specific thing. And she did it well, and she was so kind, and she was so honest. And if she said you're cool, you're cool. Girl, I had to start like ironing clothes and stuff. I was like, I can't mess this up. Like, because they're going to go back to Constance and say that, like, what is this heathen that you brought me? Like, I have to now be fantastic. But that just shows how powerful you are at building these relationships. And I just find it interesting that for a long time, this wasn't strategy to you. This was you being you.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And that's part of what you said earlier, like getting to know who I am. And I think I realized, and maybe it was because of what happened in 6th grade, I realized that I kind of may or may not fit in all the time, but I am who I am. And these are the different aspects of my life, whether it was gymnastics, whether it was doing a minority majority program, whether it was sitting on the stoop in Memphis, etc. Like, all of that equals me. And quite frankly, I think it was exhausting. I think that birthday party, it was just exhausting trying to be one person on this side of the pool, this person. I was like, I hate all y'all. I remember I told everybody to go home. Like, like,
peace for my birthday. Everybody go home. Mom, get the cake.
I was done.
Yeah.
It was like one of those birthday parties where, like, remember I don't know, I guess the Residence Inn still exists. Like, it was a big deal. Mom was like, you're going to middle school. We'll get you a hotel. You can have your friends come. It'll be fun. Big slumber party. I was done. I think I cried. I was just like, everybody's insane.
But you know what? I love that boundary for you at 11 to be like, protect my peace. Like, I'd rather be at home alone with myself than have to navigate all these nuances that honestly make no sense.
Yep, that is fair.
So how are you teaching others to do that? Because I feel like it's very clear that you are naturally gifted at this social capital, which becomes professional capital. So as an example, as a mom, because you have a baby who's not so baby anymore, but he'll always be your baby, how do you teach this to him or to other people about the power and importance of when you show up in the world, show up as yourself and build a bridge with other people, because you never know when you need that bridge?
Yeah. I think some of it depends on the context, right, in which I'm engaging with that person. One thing that I committed to doing, probably maybe the first time I was like not managing a team, but I was managing attorneys, just because maybe I was a senior associate, they were junior. It's just by living in my authenticity. And that could be something as simple as, I feel like getting a piercing on the back of my neck. Or I feel
that
like,
sounds
I don't know.
painful as hell.
No, it's surface piercing. It's really not painful. Or whatever, just what I wanted to do, what I wanted to do, because I didn't feel like it was hurting anybody. If you want to judge me, fine. Doesn't change my intellect. All those things. And just by showing up as me, depending on, like, if I'm a senior associate, they're like, did you just go get a piercing? I'm like, why do you think you can't do what you want to do? Well, I won't wear a bright color because I don't want to be looked at differently. And my opinion is this: whatever you reserve behind closed doors and people coming after you are going to do the same thing. It's uncomfortable. How are you going to even do your best work if you're uncomfortable? So some of it is leading by example. and having those not even official conversations. They walk into your office and you're like, why would you do that? And and it's just like, I not that I don't understand it, I do understand it. I don't like the monolithic culture that it creates. I think that's not realistic. So that's some of it. Sometimes, like with my kiddo, well, first I would say kids are going to be who they are out the womb, because my child, I think I could show him all day that you can get on the phone in a sweatsuit and do your work. He will never do that. That's just not his personality. With that being said, when he comes to me and he's like, well, I need to do, what's a good example? Some of it is the way that he maybe will deal with his work, or deal with, it could be like a video game. Well, everyone wants to play Madden and they said I have to get this, but I think I can do it this way. Okay, then do it your way. What happens if you do it your way? And we'll talk it through. And more likely than not, you end up at the same spot. I said, then do it. What makes you feel comfortable? Or,
so you're giving permission for him to...
And that's what it is.
But I would also argue with that, giving him permission to think differently, you're also providing a safe space for him to fail. And that's okay too.
That's okay too. And that's even when I'm inadvertently doing it with colleagues. It's just empowering and permission to be yourself. And also, I think part of that, regardless, with adults, you're an adult. Whatever repercussions you get, whether you're showing up inauthentic or authentic, the repercussions can come. I'd much rather defend and stand behind myself and not me trying to do something a certain way or be a certain person and be penalized for it. Because then I'm not only penalized, I'm also like, I don't even know how to tell you why I did that. Because the only reason I did is because I saw Xander over there doing it and that seemed to work for him. I'd much rather come from a place of authenticity and say, this happened. This is how I thought about it. This is why I thought about it this way, and move on. But yeah, failing is fine. Empowering people, leading by example. But especially when it's junior folks, I think it's also being aware that everybody's watching you and they're paying attention to the nuances. Like, it's great that you can get up there and argue emotion, etc., and be cutthroat, stand on everybody's throat while you do it, on their neck. I think that's great. And quite frankly, it gets results. Sometimes you do need to be that way in certain situations. I think there's a difference between using your ability to stand on somebody's neck and get something done versus standing on someone's neck, holding them down, being trifling, and all those things. And I think even a cutthroat person, I have worked for some people who, if I had a choice, I wouldn't work for them again. But they respect me. And quite frankly, I respect how they work. I think that's your choice of who you work for and the type of environment you want. But I do think there's what people will see, even if they're that cutthroat and they may lead and you're like, yeah, they kind of did that person wrong. I know very few people who work that way who don't respect the fact that I don't work that way and I'm still able to get similar results. And I think people underestimate, like, they see someone acting a certain way, working cutthroat, doing something that maybe, I'm not going to say ethically, but maybe it's just like, that's not how I would approach it. And you think to make them respect you, especially those very strong personalities, the folks who yell in conference rooms, and you're like, oh my gosh. A lot of people will copy that. Instead of saying, I'm not going to lead that way. That's not how I'm going to do. Because they copy it because they think that person will respect them. And what people,
or they think that's what gets you the next step, right? Like, so if I act like a demon, then I will make more money. I will be at the top because that's what the top is.
Yeah. But there's only can be like one demon at the top. So you got to really think about that. Like, it works for them. What if everybody acted like them? But more importantly, regardless of how they act, how they did it, they will respect you for doing it your way, maybe even more so than someone who does it your way. Because at the same time you're thinking and saying, maybe that's how I should be, I know very few of those cutthroat kind of yell in conference room folks who have looked at you do it another way and don't respect you. And so I think you have to me, that's just a testament of being you. Like when I talked about that difficult boss, well, I have several people who I work for who are just difficult to work for. People don't like working for them, etc. They will come to me and say, how do you navigate this person? I don't. I let them be them, and I'm going to be me.
I don't. Insert period. See, this is why I keep you in my life, because you teach me so many things, because I'm thinking of a certain demon. And I remember when he was demoning in a meeting that I was in, and instead of pulling a Constance, I pulled a Lexi. And so after the meeting, I pulled him aside and I was like, yo, if you ever talk to me that way, it's on sight. And that's probably not the best way that I should have handled it, because I think after that conversation, our relationship went a little bit south. Which retrospectively makes sense. But what I hear from you is this idea of just like, allow people to be them and just focus on you and your integrity and your values.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying like if he was disrespectful, you totally should say something. But I don't need to navigate someone, check somebody. Basically, if you're not straight up saying something to me that's going to piss me off or it's just like disrespectful, and if you're not trying to like assault people, if the world's not going to end, do you, boo? It's not my responsibility to try to navigate crazy, because then you start looking crazy and you step outside yourself. So it's like, I don't learn how to navigate these people, change them. What I do is I'm consistent, drive results, intelligent, who I am, and they learn to navigate me. And that's kind of how I think about it. Because and this boss, I remember, because now he went to being a judge and then he's back at the firm. He is difficult. He does not bother me. He doesn't try me like he tries other people. I'm not intimidated by him or nothing. As far as I'm concerned, he's an adult with a temper tantrum. Okay. I'm not your mom. When you finish having a temper tantrum, we can talk about what you need me to do to get through, this case or whatever. And that's literally how I think about it. And I think his respect for me is because I'm not trying to navigate him and suck up to him. And I think that has worked for me many ways. I do think, do you have to be tactical? Sure. Is there a certain amount, maybe an EQ, intangible, everyone has their life experiences? Sure. I'm not saying do it my way. I'm saying look at the themes that I'm showing you and you figure out how to implement it your way.
But we also have to discuss, which is something that I think that many times we don't just really hit home. You're also very good at your job. Like, y'all, this only works in corporate spaces if you can get to results. As you said earlier, most people, leaders especially, as long as you get to the end result, they just don't care. They don't have time to care.
And that even goes back to school.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of things. I made all A's most of the time. I almost got an F in art. I don't know what happened. But generally...
I made all A's, and then as soon as that Stanford University letter came in, I was like, F it, and I ended up with like a B- in English. And my parents were like, what happened? And I was like, I'm in college. They were like, you're right, whatever. I was like, I don't care about any of this anymore. I'm not going to school.
I used to do crazy stuff. I had we're close enough in age, the house phone, and then I had my own separate line because it was cheaper to have a separate line than call waiting. Mm-hmm. So I had the school, if I was late, they would call my phone, or if I was skipping, and I would answer the phone myself.
I didn't do all that. I
was always into something. But see, teachers didn't know what to do with me because, like you said, good at what you do.
So you weren't the typical, like, well, this kid's misbehaving and they're failing math. It was like, Constance is acting a fool, but like she definitely got the highest grade on that test.
It gives you passes. I will say, I think what I did learn when I think about professional capital, it actually gets you pretty far. And I mean, like, I got in trouble between my senior year and my freshman year of college, trouble with the law. My penalty, did you just open your eyes wide?
Keep going.
It was several of us who got in trouble at the same time.
But you had the 4.0.
Had the 4.0. I was on my way to Ivy League college.
See, that's the issue with kids like us, because I promise you, I was a model student, and then as soon as that acceptance letter came in the mail, I was like, F it. Like, y'all about to get all this range.
I've never been a model student. I am amazed every day that my child wants to go to school. I will say, hey, you want to leave early and go on a trip? No, I don't want to miss school. I'm like, who are you? That is insane.
I was trying to miss school I was like, my dad's like, you ready for school? And I'm like, cough, cough. And he was like, get in the car. I was
like, oh my gosh, you didn't put the thermometer up to the light. I was doing that. And then it's messed up and it says 107. And then you have to do it again.
And your mom is like, girl, sit down.
Right. You had to get it just right.
Right, just right.
Higher than 99, less than 102. Keep it.
I was missing school left. Honestly, like, you know those kids who get like those like awards for coming to school every day? My parents were always like, we know you're not going to get that. I'm like, because you know I will find a reason.
I wasn't.
I was not want to be here. But my report card said differently. My report card reflected what it needed to reflect. So I think my parents gave me more passes as well. They were like, want to go to Rosa Parks' funeral? It's on a Friday, but we can get you the week off. I was like, yes, beloveds. R.I.P. Yes.
But you know what? I was just thinking, like, back to getting in trouble. And I remember my penalty was literally like I had to do a whole bunch of community service my first year of college and everything would go away. The penalty for some of my friends was not great. It actually ruined their lives. Now, was I happy that it didn't ruin mine? Did I feel super grateful? Did I get my shit together and not try any dumb shit like that anymore? 100%. What it also taught me was professional capital. I wouldn't have called it that, but it didn't just make me feel grateful. When you ask me how do I share that with others, it made me, for example, when my little cousins were talking about college, they were thinking about where to go. I learned there are some colleges you can go to and damn near fell out, you still get a good job. There are other colleges that you can go to who will never give you below a C because it doesn't look good for them. And there are some colleges that are very strict graders. What did I tell my cousins? I said, shoot for these schools, and this is why. They will never give you a C. You may not learn anything, but that name will take you. So what I started to learn was like how to, even if you don't have, I would say the professional capital to like, you haven't figured out how to do it well, but until you fake it till you make it. I think that's what it was. Teaching them how to, you know what, we got to figure out how to be in college. We got a lot to figure out. But I faked my way through college. Nobody knew. I mean, I knew. My roommates knew because. But I still ended up in the same spot. But all of that, getting in trouble, seeing how, I've always been very observant. Like one thing you said, do things naturally. Some of it is naturally how I am. But one thing that I do very well, I am super observant. Like I can look at companies, be in a company, look at organizations. I can tell you who's about to get laid off, how an organization is going to shift. I'm good at that. I like research. I like looking at signs. I like being strategic. So when I'm in college, even though my grades may kind of suck, I'm also watching how it moves. I'm like, well, how did they do that? And I'm figuring out how to implement those things. So when I was leaving out of college, I was like, okay, I'm glad I didn't go to this other school because I definitely would have had an F. Because I didn't know what I was doing. Being at Penn actually kind of saved me. It let me kind of fall on my face, but not look like I fell on my face. But those are like little secrets you figure out, and I think, and you implement it throughout your industry until you figure it out. So you're figuring it out, and then when you actually figure it out, then you're like, oh, okay, I've been faking it until I make it these people. Together. Yeah.
But building that professional social capital with people. Because at the end of the day, professionally, all this is connections. All this are people saying, let me give you an opportunity to fail and still be okay and still pay, you know, your grocery bill. That's all that this is.
But that's that showing up. Like, figure out how to do what you do. Don't turn in shitty work. Don't not be engaged. There are all these things, and the part of doing that is honestly, so I'm good at what I do. When people ask me what I do, I'm not always sure at any given moment. Right now I'm negotiating deals. Another minute, I don't know, I'm leading a team in operations. I just do stuff. But I'd figure out what's that underlying skill set that I'm really good at that people value. And I keep those skills to par. I show up a certain way. I recognize that what I have at this point in my life is that professional capital. Like, I can give, like Lexi said, 46 names. And I would say half or more of those people, when they talk to you, hey, I hadn't talked to you in years. I just talked to Lexi. She seems great. You know.
They better have said that to you, because I was like, you better call Constance and let her know that I am not playing here, okay? I told them all that.
And they did. And some of these people I hadn't talked to in years, you know. But I think I forgot my train of thought.
Social professional capital.
But I think yes. Okay, so I think what I was going to go into, starting over as I've gotten older, has looked a lot more dramatic, right? Has been, for example, took a year off work to get divorced and do some other things in my personal life. Took some time off when I had my kid. He has severe medical issues. And I wouldn't even say time off that I planned. It was like a job ended. I didn't have time to look for another job. You know how I survived that? I was unemployed for about 3 months. My old judge, who I used to work for, called me and she said, what are you doing? You know, how are you? I was like, you know, just trying to live in the hospital with this kid, blah, blah, blah. She's like, are you working? I was like, no, I finished that. I was doing like, after law school, a lot of people go work for judges or whatnot. So it's a set time period. So I said, I finished that and I'm just, you know, reevaluating my life. And she said, that sounds like you're not making any money.
That was a beautiful PR campaign for being broke. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yes.
And I'm like, you're right. She said, what are you looking for? I said, I'm not sure. She said, well, while you figure that out, I just hired this clerk and they suck. Can you come back and work for me? And that was literally, now mind you, this is how crazy it was. I'm living in Philadelphia at this point. That clerkship, that judge is in North Carolina. I said, well, I can't move my child right now. My mom's kind of with me a lot at this moment because, you know, my kid is back and forth in the hospital. And I fly free still, right? She's like, if you can be here 2 days a week, couple weeks out the month, we'll figure it out. Because I fly a lot, so I didn't mind that. And I remember telling my mom, and she's like, girl, you better take that job. I had no desire to go back to North Carolina. But when I tell you, a job that people fight for, apply for, she's just like, I need you to come back. You did such a good job. I need you to train this person, figure it out. That was a lifeline. But it was something, I didn't even ask for it and probably honestly didn't want to do it. But with that being said, that put me back on my feet. And that was how I learned there. When I went to work for her, I didn't know anything about bankruptcy law. My first opinion I wrote for her had so many red marks on there, you would have thought that I didn't even know how to read. It was bad. But I showed up. I worked my butt off. I connected with the other clerks. I took on just a certain type of role there. It was very dependable. And I learned the job. And that's what she's like, just come back. You can just be here as much as you can. Be here. And I would fly back and forth. But there were weeks I didn't go. She's like, that's fine. Like, she knew she was going to get what she was going to get. But she also knew I was going to get that other clerk in order, make sure their works get done, and she can go back to living her life how she likes to do it while she's a judge. And that's what I mean, that showing up a certain way, and it saves you when you're starting over. Yes. Because we all are going to get into situations that we did not plan for. And you either want people to call you or you want to be able to call somebody and say, hey, I was thinking about this. What do you need? I'll call them.
I love it. I love it. Reintroduce yourself to us. Who are you?
Who am I? You know, I'm Constance Dion Thompson. I am someone, I believe in being me. I believe in protecting my space. I believe in figuring out how to survive in this world as a Black girl from Atlanta. Period. Like, I'm just me. And I try to do what feels right.
I'd like to also add that you are a strawberry shortcake connoisseur.
I absolutely love it. Do not put jam in my strawberry shortcake. I tell you, when you go to those restaurants and they're like, it has jam, not strawberries. It's strawberry shortcake. Nobody told you to mix it up, jam it up, put whatever it is you put in jam to make. I cannot stand it. It has more sugar that way too. I'm trying to keep the dessert relatively healthy. And you add this nasty jam.
As I said, family, a connoisseur. Not of any other dessert, but specifically strawberry shortcake. I have seen Constance just eat strawberry shortcake, and that was her daily meal.
Yes. Do not give me fancy chocolates.
Okay.
If you want to give me chocolate, honestly, give me a 𝐾𝐶. Don't give me that good stuff from Germany. It doesn't taste right to me. I don't like it.
And that's that
But if it's strawberry shortcake,
yes.
I want nice strawberries, no jam, actual shortcake. Don't make a cake and tell me it's a shortcake. I want this shortcake.
Okay.
Not a vanilla cake that you put some strawberries on.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Anyway, I'll expect one to my house. I'm hungry now.
I know. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my manager for 2.5 days. Turn friend, turn sister, and just always supporting my crazy ideas. I feel like I could text you and be like, so jumping off a bridge tomorrow, and I feel like you'd be like,
what are you going to wear?
Yeah. I wouldn't do it, but look good. Okay.
Yeah. What do you mean? No, Lexi, thank you for creating this platform. I've been listening to some episodes. The way you authentically get people to share and parse out these lessons from people you've met in different walks of life. I think we need more of this. And so it's a crazy idea, maybe, but it's a damn good one.
Amen. That's going to be the stickers. I'll make merch.
Do I get a profit portion?
We'll talk.
Just 5%, just for my child. Don't you love Kayla?
don't bring that baby. And on that note, we're going to end this episode.